Remove that thing from your chest immediately. This is a courtroom, not a military parade. Judge Thompson's voice rang out across the courtroom, sharp and unyielding, the words bouncing off the marble walls like bullets. After 27 years behind the bench, his authority was rarely questioned, until today. All eyes turned to the woman standing calmly before the bench. She stood tall, her uniform immaculate, the Medal of Honor resting with dignified poise on her chest. General Patricia Washington, 42 years old, the first black woman in U.S. history to earn 3 stars in the Army, returned the judge's glare without a flicker of emotion. She was not a defendant, nor was she a witness. She had come voluntarily to support the grieving family of a fallen soldier, one of her own, whose benefits were being denied by a cruel bureaucratic loophole. He had been only 19 when he died, sacrificing himself to save 8 fellow soldiers during an ambush in Kandahar. "Your Honor," Patricia said, her tone composed, unwavering. "This medal is not a decoration. It was awarded in memory of those who did not return home. I wear it to honor them." Her voice, steady and respectful, carried the quiet authority of someone who had stared death in the face and survived. Judge Thompson, 61 years old and wrapped in his black robe like a shroud of self-importance, snorted with open disdain. "I don't care what it represents. My court, my rules. If you don't remove it, you'll be escorted out for contempt." A wave of discomfort rippled through the packed gallery, filled with veterans and military families. Patricia had sensed this might happen. She had seen it in the sideways glances, heard it in the murmured comments as she walked through the doors. The judge's tone when calling her name during roll felt bitter, deliberate. She had anticipated resistance, but even she was surprised by the overt hostility. Her fingers brushed lightly against the medal. 23 years of military service. 3 tours in Afghanistan. 5 medals for valor. Commander of over 3,000 soldiers. And here she was, being spoken to like a rebellious teenager by a man who had never once worn a uniform, let alone seen combat. With all due respect, she replied, and a few veterans in the gallery instinctively straightened in their seats, recognizing the shift in her voice, "That medal represents sacrifices you may never fully comprehend." Thompson's jaw clenched. There was something about this woman, her presence, her poise, the unshakable way she stood, that infuriated him. He couldn't rattle her, couldn't make her flinch. That unnerved him. She wasn't playing by his rules. From the back of the room, an older veteran with silver hair slowly rose to his feet. Another followed. And another. Within seconds, 15 veterans were standing in silent protest, their eyes locked on the judge. The air in the courtroom thickened. A tide was rising. Patricia didn't smile, but the faint flicker in her eyes said everything. What Thompson didn't know, what no one there knew, was that every moment of this exchange was being recorded, discreetly and intentionally, by 3 hidden cameras. She had spent the past 6 months documenting patterns of racial bias in his courtroom. This was not an isolated confrontation. This was a turning point in a long, calculated strategy. Thompson's gavel slammed down hard, the crack like a gunshot. "Security, escort this person out until she learns to respect the authority of this court." The assigned security officer, an Iraq War veteran named Rodriguez, hesitated. His eyes met Patricia's. He didn't want to do this. "Your Honor," he said, voice tense, "I'd rather not." "I don't care what you'd rather do," Thompson snapped, face red with rage. "Do your job or go find another one." Patricia didn't move. Her calm never faltered. Hidden in her uniform's collar was a recording device, blinking silently. Every second, every insult, every power-drunk command was being broadcast in real time to a civil rights team that had been waiting for this moment. Beside her, the widow of the fallen soldier clutched her hand, tears running freely. "Please. General, just take it off. I can't lose you too." Patricia squeezed her shoulder gently, anchoring the young woman in place. The weight of responsibility was one she had carried since the age of 18, when she joined the army to escape poverty in Detroit. From private to general, from student to leader, she had seen war, commanded troops, buried friends. "Mrs. Roberts," she said softly, "there are moments in life when retreat is the same as dishonoring those who came before us. Today is one of those moments." Judge Thompson looked ready to explode. Her calm, her defiance, it chipped away at the image he had built of himself over 27 years. He prided himself on knowing when people didn't know their place. This woman, this black woman, didn't seem to understand hers. On the far side of the courtroom, corporate lawyer Jennifer Walsh whispered into her phone, concern in her eyes. "Yes, sir," she said. "She refuses to take it off. No, she doesn't look intimidated. She looks ready." But the voice on the other end was clear. "Proceed with the public humiliation. As planned." Thompson leaned forward again. "Last chance. Take off that medal or be arrested for contempt of court. Don't give me your war stories. I know what kind of people you really are." The silence that followed was like ice. Even the lawyers stopped whispering. Veterans in the gallery clenched their fists. In the second row, a young journalist named David Chun raised his phone and began recording. He didn't know yet if what he was witnessing was a tragedy or a triumph, but he knew it was history. Patricia turned to the judge. The calm in her eyes unsettled him. "Your Honor," she said, each word carved from steel, "you are correct. You do know my kind. We're the kind who don't bow to those who use power to mask insecurity." With a furious growl, Thompson flung his gavel across the room. "Jail. Jail for contempt." But in that moment of blind anger, Patricia saw it clearly. He had walked right into the trap. Every word recorded. Every insult documented. Every act of petty tyranny captured in high definition. And at that very moment, civil rights organizations across the country were watching it unfold, waiting to act. Rodriguez approached slowly, reluctantly. His hands shook. "General. I'm sorry. Orders are orders." "I understand, soldier," she said with a quiet nod, holding out her wrists. "You're just doing your duty." Judge Thompson watched with smug satisfaction. Finally, she was in handcuffs. Finally, someone had put her in her place. But he didn't know she had already planned every step of what came next. For 6 months, Patricia had catalogued 23 cases of discriminatory rulings against black veterans in this very courtroom, each one tried more harshly than its white counterpart. Every word, every sentencing, every racial slight had been recorded and sent to her mentor, retired Colonel James Mitchell, now a high-powered civil rights attorney. As Rodriguez led her toward the side door, Patricia made brief eye contact with a composed, silver-haired woman in the back row. Dr. Rebecca Chun, retired federal judge, civil rights icon, and mother of journalist David Chun, sat silently, her expression unreadable. To the court, she was an observer. In truth, she was a silent hammer waiting to fall. The door to the courthouse holding cell clicked open with a slow, reluctant creak. Rodriguez, the Iraq veteran turned courtroom security officer, stepped inside. His posture betrayed his discomfort, and the apology was written all over his face before he even opened his mouth. "General, can I get you anything? Water? A lawyer?" Patricia Washington, still composed and poised, shook her head softly. "Thank you, Rodriguez. My lawyer's already on the way." She shifted slightly on the cold bench, not to relax but to check the discreet transmitter embedded in her Medal of Honor pin. A soft green light pulsed once, confirmation that the signal had remained active. Every word, every glare, every act of contempt had been sent live to Colonel James Mitchell's office, where 3 seasoned civil rights attorneys were already preparing a legal offensive that would change history. Back in the courtroom, Judge Thompson sat back with smug satisfaction, basking in his perceived victory. "Did you see how I handled her?" he bragged to the corporate attorneys flanking him. "You give someone a few ribbons and they think they're royalty. Well, not in my courtroom. Not on my watch. Jennifer Walsh, the lawyer assigned to defend the bureaucratic denial of a soldier's benefits, shifted uncomfortably. She had seen the look in Patricia's eyes, the quiet determination, the unreadable confidence. It wasn't arrogance. It was the calm of a woman who knew the terrain of warfare, even if the battlefield had shifted from Kandahar to a courtroom. "Judge," she said hesitantly, "maybe we should tread carefully. She's not just some officer. General Washington has a reputation." Thompson waved her off with a laugh. "Reputation? For what? Insubordination. Don't worry, by the end of the day, she'll be gone, the case will be closed, and no one will remember her name." What Thompson didn't realize was that across town, at Mitchell and Associates, 12 monitors displayed synchronized video feeds of the courtroom incident. Watching with intense focus were attorneys, journalists, civil rights leaders, and 2 congressional aides. Patricia's story was no longer confined to the whispers of injustice. It was now a live wire of truth, and it was about to spark a revolution. In her cell, Patricia sat in silence, eyes closed, breathing slowly. She was calm. Not because she felt safe, but because she had trained for moments like these, high pressure, no room for error, where patience and precision outweighed brute strength. She had chosen her battlefield with care. She remembered the tearful widow beside her weeks earlier. "General, I don't know what to do. They say my husband's death wasn't service-related because it happened 2 days after he was discharged from the hospital. They're denying us everything." That moment had lit the fuse. Patricia had investigated quietly, using military contacts and public records. What she found chilled her. Over the past 3 years, 28 families, all black, had been denied military death benefits under similar questionable technicalities. Every single one of those cases had passed through Judge Thompson's courtroom. In contrast, white families with nearly identical circumstances were approved without question. It wasn't coincidence. It was systemic. So Patricia did what she was trained to do: prepare. Strategically. Meticulously. She began documenting Thompson's rulings, gathering case files, recording whispers in hallways, setting up secure communication with legal watchdogs and investigative reporters. She didn't just want to challenge the judge. She wanted to expose him. 30 minutes later, Rodriguez returned to the holding cell, his demeanor changed. This time, he wasn't nervous, he was astonished. "General, your lawyer is here." Not just your lawyer." Patricia stood, adjusted her uniform, and walked out with calm purpose. Back in the courtroom, Thompson's victory celebration was cut short by the dramatic reopening of the main doors. Mitchell entered first, his stride steady, gaze fixed. Behind him came an entourage that made Thompson's stomach twist: 2 federal prosecutors, 3 investigative journalists, a woman with a Federal Justice Commission badge, and Dr. Rebecca Chun, carrying a sealed federal briefcase. At the end of the line was Congressman Williams, chair of the Civil Rights Oversight Committee. Thompson's eyes bulged. "What is this circus?" he barked, standing. "This is a closed hearing." "Not anymore, Your Honor," Mitchell said coolly. "This is now a federal investigation." He gestured toward Amanda Foster, the Federal Justice Commission officer. "We have credible evidence of systemic discrimination and civil rights violations committed in this courtroom." Thompson's hands twitched. He looked for Walsh, but she was already whispering into her phone, her expression tight with worry. He turned to his bailiff. "Clear the court. Now." Foster stepped forward, raising a federal badge. "Judge Thompson, under federal authority, we are documenting this proceeding. Every word. Every reaction. And by order of the Civil Rights Committee, General Washington is to be released immediately." District Attorney Davis, who had remained silent thus far, stepped forward, flashing his own credentials. "Release her, Judge. Now. And prepare to answer for the 28 benefit denials, each one targeting a black military family." Rodriguez rushed to unlock Patricia's cuffs, visibly shaken. "General, I didn't know what else to do." "You did what you were ordered," she replied gently, rubbing her wrists. "But remember, following an unjust order is still a choice." Thompson tried to reassert control. "This is outrageous. That woman disrespected the court." Foster's recorder clicked on. "Judge Thompson, you are under federal investigation for systemic civil rights violations. Anything you say may be used against you." The room fell silent. Mitchell opened his briefcase. "General Washington has submitted 23 hours of audio recordings, 87 pages of documented bias, and testimony from 17 former court observers. It paints a pattern of intentional discrimination." Thompson wobbled. You set me up." Patricia stepped forward, her presence filling the space. "No, Your Honor. I simply recorded what you were already doing. The trap was your own behavior." Foster activated a speaker. The courtroom filled with Thompson's voice, played back in stark, chilling clarity. "I know the kind of people you really are. This woman doesn't know her place. People like her." Each word landed like a punch. Veterans in the gallery shook their heads in silent condemnation. Some wiped away tears. Others whispered, "Finally." Congressman Williams approached the microphone. "A full federal audit will be launched into all your rulings for the past 5 years. Immediate suspension is effective as of now." Thompson looked around for someone, anyone, to support him. But all he found were stares. Cold. Distant. Ashamed. "I've served 27 years, he cried. "You can't erase everything because of a misunderstanding." Patricia moved forward, stopping in front of him. "I served 23 years protecting the Constitution you just spent 27 years betraying. The difference is, I remember who I swore to serve." Foster shut the speaker off. "Judge Thompson, you are officially relieved of duty." As the former judge was led out of his own courtroom, red-faced and trembling, Patricia stood at attention. Her Medal of Honor, still gleaming, caught the light, and the attention of every camera now recording live. The moment of humiliation that had been meant to silence her had instead become the catalyst for exposing an empire of prejudice. 6 months had passed since that explosive day in court, but the shockwaves were still rippling through the nation. Patricia Washington now walked the marble halls of the Pentagon, not in uniform but in a formal civilian suit, flanked by aides and officers who stood when she entered. Her Medal of Honor still rested on her chest, now a beacon not just of battlefield courage, but of civic bravery. After the public exposure of Judge Thompson's courtroom practices, the scandal dominated national headlines. Civil rights groups, veterans associations, legal scholars, and ordinary Americans watched in disbelief as the layers of prejudice unraveled. Congress moved swiftly. A bipartisan vote approved Patricia's appointment as Deputy Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Her confirmation hearing lasted only 90 minutes. There were no objections. Even political rivals acknowledged her poise, intelligence, and service. Her first act in office was to personally review the 28 cases Judge Thompson had unjustly dismissed. Within weeks, every military family affected had their benefits restored, plus additional compensation for years of emotional and financial damage. Congress passed the Veterans Fairness and Accountability Act, banning judges from citing non-service technicalities to deny benefits. Patricia helped draft it herself. Thompson, meanwhile, lived in stark contrast to his former life. Fired in disgrace, stripped of his law license, and facing civil lawsuits from every family he had wronged, he was forced to sell his home to cover settlements. He took a job as a night shift security guard at a suburban mall. There, under flickering lights and empty parking lots, he was haunted by memories of a courtroom he no longer controlled. He watched the news alone now. On the day Patricia received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, his one-bedroom apartment echoed with the sound of applause from her ceremony. He saw her standing beside the president, her chin high, her speech calm and clear. That woman, the one he had tried to humiliate, was now immortalized in American history. Back at the Pentagon, Rodriguez, now promoted to Chief of Federal Court Security, approached her with a salute. "General Washington," he said with reverence, "you didn't just save those families. You saved us all. That day, watching you stand your ground, it changed the way I see everything." Patricia smiled warmly. "You followed orders because you believed in your duty. Now you serve that duty with full understanding. That's growth. That's integrity." The national impact of her case didn't stop at one courtroom. A federal oversight committee was established to review judicial bias in all military benefit cases across the U.S. 17 judges were suspended. 143 cases were re-examined. 35 were overturned outright. And under Patricia's leadership, the new National Veterans Rights Commission was launched, staffed by lawyers, advocates, and veterans trained to detect and challenge systemic discrimination. At a ceremony honoring the Roberts family, the young widow whose case started it all, Patricia stood quietly as the woman embraced her, tears falling freely. "My husband can finally rest," she said. "His daughter will grow up with everything he earned. You made that happen." Among the crowd stood Colonel Mitchell, now head of the commission Patricia inspired. He watched with fatherly pride. "Patty," he had once told her, "don't waste your brilliance on revenge. Use it to rewrite the rules." She had done exactly that. Meanwhile, David Chun, the young journalist who had filmed that courtroom exchange, won the Pulitzer Prize for his reporting on systemic racism in the judiciary. His investigative series sparked a national conversation, not just about veterans, but about the hidden cost of unchecked authority. His mother, Dr. Rebecca Chun, was appointed head of the National Judicial Monitoring Institute, created to ensure transparency and fairness in courts across the country. Her first public speech quoted Patricia directly. "There are people who use power to silence the vulnerable. And there are others who use their own vulnerability as power to protect the ones who follow." Even Jennifer Walsh, the corporate lawyer who had once played a part in denying military families their rights, walked a different path. After witnessing Patricia's defiance and the truth that followed, she resigned from her firm. She founded a nonprofit law center devoted to defending veterans' families. When asked why, she told a reporter, "What matters isn't where you started, it's whether you have the courage to switch sides when you learn the truth." As for Patricia, she was once asked during a Harvard law lecture, "What was your greatest victory?" Students expected her to say Thompson's downfall or her appointment. Instead, she said quietly, "A young black female veteran sent me a letter." She said she now felt safe speaking out about discrimination. That someone would believe her. "That's my victory." The room was silent. That was the kind of leadership Patricia embodied, not loud or performative, but strategic, compassionate, relentless. Her fall in that courtroom had not broken her. It had revealed her purpose. And in revealing it, she had changed the system. 5 years later, Time magazine named her Person of the Year. On its cover, she stood in uniform again, the Medal of Honor gleaming on her chest. Inside the feature article, she reflected on her journey. "Thompson thought he was putting me in my place. But all he did was help me find my purpose." Sometimes, your greatest enemies are your best teachers.